there a part of you that thinks it's time for me to get back in the studio, or you're in no rush to do that, or are you waiting till the time is right for you?
Yeah, I think...
Because we can't use the word retirement for you.
Yeah. No, I already did that. I can't do that ever again. I would say I want to make music.
Diddy to come on stage, pat him on his ass, and then make the statement to people in the world that can't nobody call me Sean.
Tupac is coming back this year and stuff. Well, I've been back.
But tell me, man, why do you believe that Jay and Puffy is close, even though Jay's lawyer came out and said they're not?
Because Jay-Z and Puff was given an assignment.
What if everything you believed about Tupac's death was a lie? Not just misunderstood, but perfectly staged, protected, and executed by people more powerful than you imagined. The internet is not just reacting, it is erupting. A storm is unfolding. Across social media, one that challenges everything we thought we knew about one of hip-hop's greatest icons. The story is not coming from random. Internet users or conspiracy theorists desperate for attention. It is coming from former insiders, ex-bodyguards, and people who were close enough to the action that they could no longer keep quiet. According to them, Tupac Shakur did not die in 1996. He vanished. He left the stage not as a victim, but as a strategist. He went underground, and not just anywhere but to Cuba, where he could remain out of reach. It's protected by a government known for shielding American fugitives. This theory is not new. What is new is the way it has taken over global attention in a matter of hours. Videos are flooding TikTok. Instagram has turned into a war zone of speculation and supposed proof. Twitter is being bombarded with people demanding answers. This is not just internet noise. It is something far more serious. Because the claims are now backed by voices that once remained silent. People from inside the music industry. People who knew the contracts, the deals, and the secrets. They claim Tupac faked his death with military precision. That after being shot in Las Vegas, he was moved under the cover of night, protected by those with access and influence. The official story has holes. No public viewing, no clear images. It's a cremation that happened too fast. A funeral worker who disappeared. The coroner's report lists physical details that don't match Tupac's known stats and his own lyrics. Full of warnings, predictions, and clues about leaving the world behind on his own terms. This isn't just a wild story for clicks. It is grounded in history. Tupac's own aunt, Assata Shakur, has been living in Cuba since escaping from U.S. prison. In the 1980s, Fidel Castro had a long history of welcoming those who opposed the American system. Why wouldn't he protect a global symbol of black resistance and rebellion, especially one with the intelligence to disappear completely? But the most chilling part isn't that Tupac might be alive. It is that he may have spent these past 30 years gathering evidence, not just memories or diary notes, but names, deals, betrayal, corruption, and crimes. People in the industry are now saying he recorded everything. Conversations, meetings, schemes, and that he didn't do this alone. With access to Cuban intelligence, he could have compiled a file so powerful, so complete, it would bring down entire empires. Executives in the music world are not asking whether it's true. They are terrified of what happens if the public believes it is. Because belief is power. Once people believe Tupac never died, they begin questioning everything else. And if proof does exist, whether tapes, documents, or testimonies, then the structure that built modern hip-hop could collapse in real time. This is not about a rapper returning from the dead. 'Tis about someone who played the game smarter than anyone else, then walked away before they could destroy him. And now, the story is returning, not as myth, but as a warning. Tupac's disappearance, if true, wasn't just about self-preservation. It was about strategy. Imagine having the world think you're gone while you silently watch every move your enemies make. That's not hiding. That's warfare. In the decades since his so-called death, some of the most powerful figures in music have risen to untouchable levels. Jay-Z and Diddy once considered peers or even rivals to Tupac, are now at the center of controversy. Not just as competitors, but as potential conspirators in a much larger game. The timing of their rise wasn't accidental. Jay-Z released his debut album the same year Tupac was declared dead. Within months, the music industry shifted. East Coast dominance took over. Death row faded. And the people who were once in Tupac's shadow began building billion-dollar empires. The theory suggests that this wasn't coincidence, it was coordination. And now, that empire is cracking. Diddy faces racketeering allegations. Federal charges, disturbing testimonies, and whispers of exploitation are circling his name. Jay-Z, too, finds himself tangled in civil lawsuits and allegations that go beyond business. The image of the reform street hustler building a clean empire is being challenged. Not by tabloids, but by prosecutors, legal documents, and those who were once too afraid to speak. This is where Tupac's name re-enters the battlefield. Not as a rapper, but as a revolutionary. Because if he truly gathered evidence during his time in hiding, it would be more than just shocking, it would be strategically timed. It's a collection of audio tapes, video footage, financial records, then conversations that connect all the missing dots prosecutors have been trying to piece together. For years, sources claim that Cuban intelligence services didn't just protect Tupac, they helped him. They helped organize the evidence, they helped secure it. And now, as tensions between nations rise and legal pressure mounts in the United States, whispers suggest that Cuba may be ready to release it. Not as a favor, but as a calculated strike. Imagine the impact of tapes where Jay-Z and Diddy allegedly discuss silencing rivals, manipulating contracts, and coordinating with known enforcers. These are not wild accusations anymore. They are part of sealed legal strategies, discussed quietly in federal buildings. If these recordings exist, they're not only damning in the court of public opinion, they could be admissible in real courtrooms. Technology has advanced. Voice recognition software can now authenticate old recordings with extreme precision. If the recordings are real, it would be nearly impossible for either mogul to deny their voice. And if what's on them is even half as explosive as insiders claim, then their legal teams are already bracing for a storm they can't contain. But this is bigger than two individuals. Costs. If Tupac has recordings, if he has documents, if he has names, then the entire industry is exposed. From label executives to entertainment lawyers, from promoters to media gatekeepers, everyone who profited off silence could find themselves facing questions they're not prepared to answer. And what about Suge Knight? The one man who was beside Tupac the night he was shot, even he never confirmed the death with certainty. From behind prison walls, Suge has repeatedly said that Tupac didn't seem like a man dying. He was joking, alert, calm. Suge later admitted that if anyone could pull off a fake death, it was Tupac. That comment wasn't just nostalgia, it was a signal. And when asked about the cremation, Suge said, the man who allegedly handled it disappeared, retired, gone. No. Trace, that's not just strange, it's nearly impossible to explain. Especially when paired with the fact that no one outside of Tupac's mother and hospital staff ever saw him after the shooting. This is where the legend transforms into something far more dangerous. Because it's no longer about whether Tupac is alive. It's about why he might have stayed hidden. Revenge, justice, exposure, whatever his motive, the result is the same. A complete unraveling of the music industry's most protected secrets. And it is happening now, not by accident, but by design. The deeper you go into the timeline, the clearer it becomes that something was being orchestrated behind closed doors. Suge Knight's strange behavior, Snoop Dogg's last-minute change of plans, and the radio messages passed between artists on the night of Tupac's shooting paint a picture of foreknowledge. Not coincidence. Witnesses recall Snoop speaking over a secured radio, saying they got him, as if confirming a hit, not reacting to shocking news. Why was Snoop in possession of high-grade communication equipment reserved for internal security teams? Why did Nate Dogg express relief at not standing next to Tupac that night? These were not casual fears. They hinted at an awareness of something deadly about to unfold. These aren't isolated incidents. They are puzzle pieces leading to a conclusion that shatters the mainstream narrative. If Tupac wasn't meant to survive, then why are there so many loose ends, so many inconsistencies, and so many people now choosing to speak? Then comes the most damning link of all, the $1 million bounty allegedly offered by Diddy for the hit on Tupac and Suge Knight. This wasn't speculation. It's now part of federal documentation brought to light during active criminal investigations. The name Dwayne Keefe D. Davis is no longer whispered behind closed doors. His connection to the events of that night is being dissected in courtrooms on record with sworn statements. According to testimony, the money never made its way back to Diddy. Instead, it was kept by another party who used it to fund a business venture. But the intention was clear. This was not gang warfare, was corporate warfare, masked as street violence. The goal was elimination, control, and ultimately, the clearing of a path for Bad Boy and ROC-A-Fella Records to dominate the scene in Tupac's absence. Look at the aftermath. Jay-Z's rise was meteoric, almost suspiciously so. His debut album, Reasonable Doubt, dropped in the same year Tupac disappeared. Within months, Jay-Z became a household name. It was as if the biggest obstacle to his ascent had been removed conveniently and permanently. Coincidence or a carefully timed move? Industry insiders have always been divided. Some call it luck, others call it design. But now, with lawsuits, criminal charges, and long-buried whispers emerging, as testimony, even the skeptics are beginning to question the official story. When you connect these events with Tupac's supposed survival, it all begins to align. If he truly faked his death, he didn't do it just to escape. He did it to fight back when the time was right down. With legal heat bearing down on both Diddy and Jay-Z, that time may have come. Sources suggest that Tupac compiled everything he needed: Dodio, documents, names, transactions while hiding in Cuba under government protection. 3 decades of silence, watching, collecting, waiting. Not hiding like a fugitive, but preparing like a soldier. A ghost with state resources, intelligence, support, and the motive of betrayal. If such evidence exists, it would be explosive enough to destroy careers, shatter empires, and collapse the music industry's power structure in a matter of weeks. And here's the scariest part. This isn't just theory anymore. Federal prosecutors are already piecing together cases that seem to be missing one final puzzle piece. What if Tupac's archive is that missing piece? It's not just a cultural reckoning, it's a legal one. If this mountain of evidence exists, and if the Cuban government releases even a portion of it, the fallout will be catastrophic. We're talking about RICO cases, public trials, revoked contracts, and billion-dollar companies collapsing under the weight of exposure. And all of it traced back to one man, Tupac Shakur, who may have outplayed the entire system, not just with lyrics, but with calculated silence. The world saw a tragedy in 1996, but what if it was actually the start of a long, cold revolution being executed with deadly precision? The people at the top are no longer asking, is Tupac alive? They're asking, what does he have, and when will it surface? As this narrative unfolds, the role of Cuban intelligence becomes increasingly critical. If reports are true, then Tupac's years in exile were not spent hiding in fear, but rather working closely with Castro's inner circle, utilizing intelligence methods, securing storage for evidence, and preparing a campaign that would strike not with bullets, but with irrefutable facts. Sources suggest that what Tupac may have compiled is not a random assortment of recordings and notes, but a highly detailed dossier, professionally archived, chronologically structured, and legally potent. This isn't speculation from internet forums. These are claims echoed by former operatives, law enforcement insiders, and individuals who worked in and around the entertainment and political intersection. The document, sometimes referred to as the Cuban Vault, reportedly contains everything from financial records and private meeting transcripts to surveillance photos and phone logs. Unlike past claims, this dossier is not about proving Tupac is alive. It's about proving who wanted him gone, why. Federal investigators are allegedly aware of the vault's existence. Surveillance of Cuban communication channels reportedly detected an increase in encrypted messages tied to archive data, sparking interest from multiple U.S. agencies. The FBI and Department of Justice are now operating under the assumption that even if Tupac isn't alive, the information he compiled still exists and may soon be weaponized. That alone is a seismic shift. Until now, prosecutors have struggled to connect the dots in cases against Jay-Z and Diddy. They've had partial testimonies, digital leaks, and circumstantial evidence. But what they lack is continuity proof that these weren't isolated events, but orchestrated criminal operations. Tupac's archive could be the missing key that unites dozens of separate investigations into one unstoppable federal case. It could validate long-dismissed claims, corroborate insider confessions, and reveal the structural rot that lies beneath the surface of global music dominance. Imagine what such revelations would do to the current entertainment landscape. Every artist who built a brand under Diddy's or Jay-Z's mentorship would come under scrutiny. Every album, endorsement deal, and award might be seen through a new lens. If it turns out that these empires were built on betrayal, bribery, and even murder, then public trust wouldn't just evaporate, would explode. The backlash wouldn't be limited to hip-hop. It would extend into corporate partnerships, advertising firms, film deals, and stock valuations. The legal consequences would be immediate, but the cultural reckoning would be generational. Labels would scramble to distance themselves, artists would flee contracts, and shareholders would demand accountability. The music industry, as we know, it would enter a crisis not seen since the payola scandal, but amplified 100 times by the internet, by the power of viral outrage, and by the emotional weight of Tupac's legacy. What makes all of this more plausible than ever before is timing. Diddy and Jay-Z are both facing legal and reputational crises. Social media has become a battlefield with influencers, journalists, and former insiders feeding the public appetite for truth. The veil of untouchability that once surrounded these moguls is disintegrating in real time. The Cuban dossier, whether fact or fable, Vice Brigley has become the most feared concept in entertainment because its arrival would mean that the era of silence is over. That every whisper in the hallway, every backroom deal, every coded message on old studio tapes was not just heard, but recorded and preserved. Tupac, in this light, is no longer just an artist or even a survivor. He becomes a symbol of patient revolution, the man who allowed the world to forget him so he could one day make them remember what really happened. The fear now is not whether he's alive. Fear is whether his truth is finally ready to speak.